Over in Tennessee, meanwhile, just a wild night last night in the legislature. We could put up C1 here. So for people who haven't been following along here, basically 3 Democrats in the Tennessee House participated in a protest inside the Capitol for gun legislation. The Democratic lawmakers kind of chanted along with the protesters who had come in.
Well, some of them were leading. They had megaphones and were leading the chants.
Right. And so, and the charge that they're getting hit with is speaking from the floor without recognition, basically. And so the Republicans said that they're going to go ahead and expel these 3 Democrats. They held the votes. They expelled 2 of them. They did not have the votes to expel the 3rd one. I will let the viewers guess which ones of those are black, which ones of those are white.
She hung on by 1 vote. I think they needed 66, and she got 65.
Yeah, and so that was Gloria Johnson who survived. I think we have a clip of her. Here's Gloria, who's still Representative Johnson, right here, actually.
Yes, and we're going to fight hard to get him back.
Why do you feel like there was a difference in the House?
I will answer your question. It might have to do with the color of our skin.
And so let's roll one more clip too here. This is from Phil Lewis, my old colleague at HuffPost, from his Twitter feed. Roll C3 here. After that vote was held, but before the Johnson and Pearson votes. So what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think on the right, there's a lot of conversation now about whether to fight fire with fire. And then you get into this whole, like, who started it, chicken or egg conversation about who actually ratcheted up, who broke the norm first. And I don't know that there's really any satisfying answer to that question in different cases, but the right has, I think, been cheering this expulsion, saying, you would do it to us. We all know how the media would react if a bunch of conservatives, in opposition to abortion, did that. We all know how the media would depict it. So get them the heck out of here. And I mean, 65 people voted to expel Gloria Johnson, too. I mean, that's not a small number. That's a lot of votes for expulsion of 3 people. And they actually all had different final tallies of how many people voted to expel them. The argument is that the 2 gentlemen were using megaphones. They were part of the people. I've seen that argument circulated by Tennessee Republicans that they were the people that were actually leading chants with megaphones and extra disruptive. That said, I never liked the idea of fighting fire with fire. It's never. I don't love it constitutionally, and I don't love it legally in the system. I'm not a huge fan of it.
Yeah, and my objection is that it's not the same fire. So I've seen a lot of people saying, like, these are insurrectionists, and therefore they need to be expelled. Clearly making January 6th references, but no members of Congress were expelled as a result of January 6th. No members of Congress faced even a censure vote.
Although members of Congress weren't leading January 6th. I mean, like, the picture of Josh Hawley even is completely misleading. It was
they weren't
like out there with megaphones. No, there's a complete argument that it was ginned up by reckless statements by members of Congress. I'm not disputing that, but I think it's different. Granted, I agree with you, it's not apples to apples, but it is different when you're leading what is a disruptive protest. I don't think what happened at the Tennessee State House was an insurrection.
Right, because, to back up a little bit, I remember when January 6th happened thinking that this was going to change the way that protest was going to be either done or responded to around the U.S. Capitol and other state capitals, because, you and I covered the response to the Kavanaugh hearings. You had the Hart Building, which is one of the Senate office buildings right down the street from here, just completely filled with protesters every single day. And those protesters would go into the hallways and they would kind of buttonhole members of Congress and sometimes yell at them.
It's civil disobedience, yeah.
There was that viral moment with Jeff Flake where he's like, they're basically blocking his elevator from leaving and pouring their hearts out about the sexual assaults that they had gone through, these 2 women. And you can see Flake listening to them. It was this moment where civil disobedience had kind of transformed itself into civil society, into an actual conversation, and then Flake goes to the hearing and says, I'm not actually ready to vote for Kavanaugh. I want a 1-week delay so that the FBI can investigate this. It's this really, really historic moment of people pressuring the Senate. And I remember thinking,
I don't think there's any sincerity behind that decision, but yes.
No, but like he felt pressure.
He definitely did.
And so after January 6th, I started thinking like that type of thing is going to be treated much differently because none of the Capitol Police I spoke to, none of the senators thought that any of the people that were protesting Kavanaugh were going to hurt anybody or were going to kind of disobey the Capitol Police. Like they would often get arrested, but it would be that kind of ceremonial arrest where it's like, all right, everybody line up and do your civil disobedience arrest now. And they would all put their hands behind their back or they would get, carried out.
Yeah.
But you didn't have people swinging giant American flags. You didn't have people who had bear spray. You didn't have people, poking with the bats were not flying. And the January 6th protesters were not like there to commit civil disobedience to make a point.
Oh yeah, it was a riot.
Right, yes.
Yeah, it was a riot.
But I assumed, and I think Tennessee shows that they're going to respond to even civil disobedience protests as if they're insurrections.
Well, that's a really interesting point because one of the arguments here is that they had censure available. They could have censured all of these lawmakers instead of expelled them.
You don't like that they broke the rules, broke decorum, shouldn't have done this. You have a censure vote like that. Exactly. And you can kick them off committees. Like there are things you can do short of telling these voters that your person can no longer represent you.
And the thing though with civil disobedience is that it is always this idea that you're going to get punished. You expect to get punished when the laws are broken because we do have the rule of law. And when people break laws, even in pursuit of a righteous cause, it's not as though people are in every case of civil disobedience. There's some cases where people don't deserve to be arrested because they're not actually breaking laws. But in cases where you do actually break laws, even in pursuit of a noble cause, you expect the rule of law to be applied to you. That's why you
It's
use
the letter from the Birmingham jail, not letter from the hotel room I went to after the protest was over.
And that's why you use that particular mechanism of protest. And that's one thing. So the punishment, then there's this question of whether the punishment fits the crime. The expulsion punishment fits the breach of decorum when there's a censure option available. I just think right now we're at a time when we're all, like people, I'm on the right. People are right now absolutely furious by the way that they are treated. There was a really interesting exchange between one of the guys who got expelled and one of the Republican members of the House who said, you called me a brown face to one of the guys that ended up getting expelled. And he said, well, I said you put a brown face, a brown mask or something on white supremacy. This is really nasty. I mean, that's a level of, that is an accusation that I think you can understand why it is pushing so deep and pushing on people so deeply. And that is a really vitriolic and nasty thing to say. And I'm not saying it doesn't come from both sides. I am, though, saying that I think sympathy for people who are also behaving in really, I think, abhorrent ways in certain cases, that I don't like. And that's the double standard is exactly what has pushed Republicans to the point where they're like, screw it, we're expelling them.
Right. And the tit for tat then raises the question of, well, what else should people be expelled for? And you've got Representative Jones here making this speech, which stick around for the end of this one. You're going to be shocked at where it goes.
For years, one of your colleagues who was an admitted child molester sat in this chamber, no expulsion. One member sits in this chamber who was found guilty of domestic violence, no expulsion. We had a former speaker sit in this chamber who is now under federal investigation, no expulsion. We have a member still under federal investigation, no expulsion. We had a member pee in another member's chair in this chamber, no expulsion. In fact, they're in leadership.
Yeah, so if you're going to talk about decorum and the rules of the House floor, maybe they never bothered to write down, you cannot pee in another member's chair.
It's not enumerated.
But I think that it is understood as a common rule.
You shouldn't do
that
it.
You shouldn't do that. And this was Republican on Republican violence. It turned out I researched this incident.
You should be expelled for doing that.
I mean, kind of.
Yes.
But his point is they weren't.
Right.
And you have...
Because Republicans control the House right now, or control the
Right.
legislature right now.
Right, and then he also mentions domestic violence, the pedophilia, et cetera. And those, you could go to the House of Representatives, you got a guy who's just completely made up everything about himself, not expelled. So that raises the question of who gets expelled, why, and when.
And I still think, though, that the question, I don't obviously disagree with any of that. If you pee in someone's chair, you should be expelled. That's just like so obvious. And that rule applies to both of us, Ryan. And to you, Sagar and Crystal.
What about a warning?
First you get a warning. You get 3 strikes. I was going to just finish, though, by saying the double standard thing is a real problem, not just for the right, but also for the left, because it's what creates more, and this is a serious point, it's what creates more January 6s. People feel like they're just getting trampled on over and over again. They're going to start justifying their protests of bad behavior. They're going to start justifying bad behavior as a protest of bad behavior. And you can go all the way down, and you can always pull back more layers and do the chicken and egg thing. This person started it. Well, it goes back to Newt Gingrich. No, it goes back to Barry Goldwater. No, it goes back to FDR. Like, you can keep saying who broke the first norm. It goes back to Abraham Lincoln. They might keep going. But at the end of the day, you're just going to get more bad behavior the more that we're incapable of controlling ourselves. So I think that applies in both cases here.
And this isn't over. Now, in order to fill these seats, the people who are responsible for filling them have reportedly are going to send back Representatives Pearson and Jones as
special election.
Well, I think first there'll be appointments. We'll see exactly what the details are. But you haven't heard the last of these guys. Like, you can kick them out, but the voters and the local officials can send them back.
And Republicans just elevated their profile to the next level. I mean, these are now national political figures because of all of this.
Right, and they elevated them to hero status. People will remember that legendary and horrifying story where Preston Brooks, the South Carolina congressman, almost beat Charles Sumner, abolitionist, to death, broke his cane. A bunch of people mailed him canes. They were about to boot him out of Congress. He quit. They held a special election. He ran for that special election and he won. Voters sent him back to Congress.
There you go. It doesn't end.
No.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.